When you say the term biohacker, the first thing that comes to mind is having a bunch of like wires connected to you and running with an oxygen mask and measuring your VO2 max and all this wild stuff, and you think, that's not for me. I don't have a lab, right? I can't just like plug myself in and figure out all these metrics. The cool thing is that biohacking is a real thing. And it's not just for nerds, it's for people that want to understand their body. So I'm going to kind of give you the steps and sort of the natural progression of becoming a biohacker, because I didn't start out as a biohacker at all. Okay, now the term biohacker really just means you know your body and you know your own biology to the point where you know when you need to make a change or where you need to make a change. I know my body well enough now that I know when I need more sleep, or I know when I need more in the way of specific fats, or I know when I need more in the way of specific exercise. Do you think I knew that when I was 280 pounds working a corporate desk job? Do you think I was No, not at all. It's something you learn, and it's a natural progression, and that's what's really, really cool. And I often find that specific ways of eating end up being sort of gateways to that. You start with one thing, logging your food, stuff like that, and next thing you know, you're tracking your blood glucose, and next thing you know, you're wanting to know all the science about yourself, and that's how you can start having fun and really develop the optimal physique, but also the optimal mental wherewithal to really just feel accomplished and feel great. So we're gonna take a trip down kind of the natural progression, because I tend to find that a low carb diet and a ketogenic diet end up sort of being the gateway to biohacking. And you can start looking at the different things that you can measure, and I'll show you them and explain them. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button, then hit that little bell icon to turn on notifications as well, so you never miss a beat or never miss my live broadcasts. All right, so the first thing is the obvious one. Okay, the first step to being a biohacker and figuring this out and understanding your body is logging your food. I know it sounds generic and you're probably like, I'm gonna turn off this video. This is another typical YouTube video. No, this whole thing is gonna be different, but logging your food is important. The Journal of Diabetes Research actually published a study that found that when people log their food, there was a predictable linear weight loss. Okay, they were able to see the trajectory of weight loss compared with those that were sometimes tracking or not tracking at all but still reducing calories. There was undulations, and it was not predictable. It was erratic. Now that's important because we need to know data. We need to know trends. You have to start looking at your body a little bit like you look at a technical analysis of like a stock chart, right? You want to understand the direction you're going, and logging your food is the first step. Now there's another study that was published in Nutrition Education and Behavior Dietary that found that the use of smartphone apps even improves this more. So by using smartphone apps, now we can start really seeing trends. And people that use the smartphone apps have more food awareness than those that don't. Food awareness is the first step of biohacking and being able to know your body inside and out. So now let's go ahead and move on to the next thing that you might want to start looking at. And that's going to be measuring your glucose or measuring your ketones. I say glucose or ketones because not everyone that's watching this video is doing keto, right? That's the next step. Start pricking your finger and testing your blood glucose and seeing what your response is to certain foods. If you're not in keto, you should still know what is spiking your blood sugar so that you can control it and work out at the best possible times and everything like that. I've got plenty of videos on that. If you're in keto, that's kind of the natural progression, right? You start going low carb, and then you're like, well, I want to know how low carb I am, and I want to know how much fat I am burning. So you start measuring your ketones. You see how it's a gateway, right? Once you start using data, and once you start looking at things like that, all of a sudden, you're in a whole different classification. You're not just dieting or anything like that. No, you're getting to know your body, and that's what's cool, okay? So measuring your ketones, measuring your glucose tells you so much, and then you cross-reference that with what you've been logging. You're well on your way to knowing your body and being a biohacker. So now we move into step number 3, which is specifically for the keto low carb group, but it's still interesting to know because it can still play a big role even if you're not keto, if you're fasting or if you're doing intense exercise. This is called your glucose ketone index, your GKI. What this is a ratio of your blood glucose to ketones. Now, it's a good measure of sort of your metabolic status, right? You want to have lower glucose and higher ketones, and the better that number is, the better your metabolism ultimately is at utilizing fats for fuel. This is great for anybody. So it's a really simple thing to do. You literally measure your glucose levels divided by 18, and then take that number and divide it by your ketone number. That's your GKI. It's super, super simple. So essentially, you've already started taking the steps of looking at your ketones, you take the steps of looking at your glucose, now combine them into one value so that you can actually track that number. So you know your GKI is going up or down, and you can see it in relationship with other things like possibly your stress or other things we'll talk about. Which brings me into the next one. The next logical thing to start looking at is going to be using a sleep tracker. And I mean a good sleep tracker, right? Like the Apple Watch has some features, but then you've got things like Whoop, you've got things like Aura, you've got things like Fitbit, these things that measure your sleep, right? These are really good things, and it's a good thing to start looking at. Here's some interesting facts when it comes down to weight loss. If you are sleep deprived, even less than just 6 hours, like just not that sleep deprived, you have a big increase in CV1 activity, which means you have endocannabinoids that are being released in your body that's making it so that food now tastes better. You get more reward from the food. It's very similar to having the munchies, right? It's just for some reason you want to keep eating because you're getting some kind of satisfaction out of it. When you're sleep deprived, that increases like 30%. So in essence, you're 30% more likely to just be snacking on things you shouldn't be snacking on. Which again, what if you were logging your food? You see that correlation between, oh, my sleep was cruddy. Oh, I ate this food. Oh, my glucose ketone index went down or went up. You can start seeing a good idea of just the overall big picture. Sometimes it's hard to visually see that, but if you create sort of like a dashboard for yourself and you monitor all this stuff, it makes a big difference. I used to have a folder on my iPhone with all my different apps, and I used to take a look every morning at where I was reading with these different apps, and I would sort of create a value for myself. There is a cool company called Heads Up Health that's done some cool stuff. They've actually created a dashboard that syndicates all these things. So it syndicates like your Apple Health stuff, it syndicates your Fitbit, your Aura, your Keto Mojo, like your Keto Mojo ketone meter, MyFitnessPal, all these different sleep trackers, and it puts it into one dashboard for you, and then you can literally add like your blood work and your lab tests in. So if you go to the doctor and you get blood work, you can input that. So you basically have a dashboard where everything is combined for you and shows you if you're on track to what you're trying to do. So if you were in ketosis and you were trying to lose weight and you were trying to improve your cholesterol, you could have data come in from your doctor or from your lab test and combine that with all of your different apps. And it's so cool. You have a dashboard right in front of you that you can see all this stuff. So it does make life a lot easier. So if you do want to check them out, I put a link down below. It's called Heads Up Health. And I got connected with them through the guys over at Keto Mojo because they thought it would be interesting for me to see and to share it with you guys. So check that out after you watch this video if you're looking for sort of a macro dashboard that shows you everything. Okay, I want to go ahead and keep going on this because this is obviously some interesting stuff. The next thing that people start to look at is heart rate variability. Heart rate variability basically shows you your recovery. Okay, and this is really getting into biohacking now. If you're measuring your heart rate variability, you're a serious person, okay, and you can combine this all, right? So heart rate variability measures the length of time between beats. Now, you want to have a high degree of heart rate variability. High degrees of heart rate variability mean that your heart has flexibility to adapt. If you have low heart rate variability, it means that your heart is exhausted because you're tired and sleep deprived. So we really want to be paying attention to this. Now, you measure this thing with, like, there's a product called the Whoop. There's a product called the Aura Ring. The Whoop goes on your wrist. The Aura Ring goes on your finger, and you just measure it. It measures your heart rate variability. So it takes a look at your sleep. It takes all very important things, and these are things to consider when you're a biohacker. You look at guys like Ben Greenfield and guys that are really, even Joe Rogan, that are big into the biohacking world. They're monitoring all this stuff. So now imagine, okay, we now have looked at our sleep. We've now looked at our glucose. We've now looked at logging our food. We've measured our ketones. And now we're starting to measure how recovered we are because the heart rate variability is going to go down as you're less and less recovered. So it's an indicator of when you can work out hard and when you can't. It's a great little number to know. And again, it could plug right into that heads-up dashboard if you were using that too. Okay, now the last thing that I want to talk about is starting to get kind of experimental with hot and cold therapies and utilizing cold therapies like with sleep and things like that. I always talk about trying to keep yourself as cool as possible when you sleep. It's been shown in multiple studies that even as little as 0.4 degrees Celsius of a temperature decrease can encourage your body to get into those deeper states of sleep. It doesn't take much. We're talking just a small amount. So keeping your body super cool while you sleep is really interesting. So utilizing all kinds of cooling techniques, cooling blankets, cooling pads, cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, but then also taking showers before bed so that you can start manipulating your body temperature. Then, of course, the next step is experimenting with taking ice cold showers so that you can get a sympathetic nervous system response, all while monitoring your heart rate variability. So anyway, I could start getting very complex here. The point is, you see the natural progression. You go from logging your food to testing your ketones to all of a sudden testing your GKI, measuring. Next thing you know, you're a biohacker. And this is what's happened to me. It's taken a couple years, but all of a sudden I look at all these things and it's part of my daily dashboard. It's part of my daily look, my outlook on what I'm going to do for the day. So I highly encourage you to start small and make these changes. And don't be afraid to be a biohacker nerd. It doesn't mean that you have to be strapped up with a bunch of wires and cords and meters. You just test yourself and you figure out where you're at. And then you have it with a simple dashboard so you can figure it out. Anyhow, if you want to learn to be a biohacker more, then also want to subscribe to this channel. So I'll see y'all soon. Thanks for watching.